The whisper of Xylos reached across light years, a faint, desperate plea carried on a modulated gravitational wave, barely distinguishable from the cosmic background radiation. It spoke of a world in its death throes, of oceans evaporated into saline dust, of a once vibrant atmosphere thinning to a poisonous haze, and of a civilization, ancient and proud, staring into the abyss of its own extinction. For millennia, the Xylosians, a species of elegant, crystalline beings who communicated through intricate light patterns and vibrational harmonies, had been observers, chroniclers of the galactic tapestry. Their technology, while advanced, was geared towards understanding, not conquering. They held no interstellar empire, no vast fleets. Their world, Xylos, was their sanctuary, their university, their everything. And now, Xylos was dying a slow, agonizing demise brought on by a combination of a natural stellar decay, an ancient, miscalculated geological experiment, and perhaps the subtle, cumulative effect of their own passive existence, neglecting the robust, dynamic processes that sustain a living planet. Their desperate message was picked up by a routine human deep space probe, Odyssey V, drifting lazily through the Perseus Arm. The message, once decoded, sent ripples through the United Earth Federation. Humanity, barely a few centuries out of its own planetary environmental crisis, had become, ironically, the galaxy's foremost experts in planetary remediation and terraforming. Our past mistakes had forged our future expertise. The Terran Environmental Reclamation Initiative, TERRI, was a sprawling, multi-billion credit operation, capable of transforming barren rocks into verdant paradises. But Xylos was different. It wasn't a barren rock. It was a once-living, now-failing world with an advanced, sentient civilization clinging to its last breaths. The ethical implications were immense. To intervene was to impose. To refuse was to condemn. After weeks of fervent debate within the Galactic Council, a decision was reached, spearheaded by Earth's impassioned delegates and the Xylosians' own heart-wrenching pleas. A human expedition would be dispatched, not as saviors, but as collaborators, offering a chance at life, a chance for Xylos to breathe again. Dr. Eris Thorne stood on the gleaming deck of the Terra Nova, watching the stars blur into streaks as the warp drive engaged. His hands, usually stained with nutrient gels and soil samples, gripped the console railing. Eris wasn't a military man, nor a politician. He was a xenobotanist, a bioengineer, and, fundamentally, a gardener. His passion lay in coaxing life from inert matter, in understanding the delicate balance of ecosystems. He had overseen the terraforming of Mars, the regreening of Venus, and countless barren exoplanets. But Xylos was his greatest challenge, and perhaps his ultimate redemption. Beside him, Commander Eva Rostova, a woman whose stern face belied a deep empathy, checked her readouts. ETA, 73 hours, Dr. Thorne. Sensors indicate Xylos is precisely as described. Atmospheric pressure is dropping, radiation levels are spiking, and surface temperatures fluctuate wildly. Life signs are minimal, confined to deep underground shelters. Eris nodded, a knot tightening in his stomach. Minimal is still something, Commander. As long as there's a spark, there's hope. The Xylosian message had included extensive data packets, geological surveys, atmospheric compositions, historical climate records, and even cultural archives. Eris had spent weeks poring over them, trying to understand not just the planet, but its people. He saw glimpses of their ethereal cities, shimmering like crystal fractals under a sapphire sky, now replaced by images of dust storms and cracked plains. He felt the weight of their despair, a silence echoing across the light years. His team was a hand-picked assembly of the best minds in TERRI, hydrologists, atmospheric engineers, geophysicists, and a dozen other specialists. They were all united by a common philosophy. Life finds a way, given the right push. Our preliminary models show a 17% chance of success with conventional methods, Doctor, said Dr. Lena Petrova, the mission's lead atmospheric engineer, her voice pragmatic. Even with our most aggressive atmospheric processors and water reclaimers, The energy input required to stabilize their core and kickstart their hydrological cycle is astronomical. And the time, they don't have time. Eris turned, his gaze sweeping over the holographic display of Xylos, its once blue marble, now a faded, bruised purple. Then conventional methods aren't enough, Lena. We need something unconventional. He had proposed his radical idea during the initial briefing, a concept that had raised eyebrows and generated a flurry of nervous coughs from the UEF High Command. It wasn't about bringing pristine, synthesized environments. It was about bringing Earth's discarded genius. We will introduce bioremediation agents, Eris explained, his voice calm, yet radiating conviction. Not just microbial cultures, but a vast engineered ecosystem. An ecosystem designed to consume, adapt, and transform. And its primary feedstock will be our garbage. A stunned silence had fallen in the briefing room. Garbage, human waste, the detritus of their civilization, the things they spent billions erasing from their own pristine worlds. To use that to heal another? It seemed obscene. Doctor, General Theron Kane had boomed, his face a mask of disbelief. Are you suggesting we dump our refuse on their dying planet? That's not terraforming. That's ecological warfare. Eris had met his gaze unflinchingly. General, it's not raw waste. It's engineered organic mass, teeming with designer microbes, nanite-infused polymers, and genetically modified flora. It's a closed-loop system designed to break down and build up, to create soil, release oxygen, and sequester toxins at an unprecedented rate. It's the ultimate recycling program on a planetary scale. We take what we discard, what is considered dead by our standards, and we use it to give life. He had projected simulations then, vast, shimmering fields of what looked like shimmering, multi-hued fungi rapidly converting synthetic waste products into rich, dark earth. Swarms of specialized nanobots disassembling non-biodegradable materials into their atomic components, ready for resynthesis by other organisms. It was terraforming, not by imposition of a new pristine system, but by the accelerated evolution of one. The Xylosians, when informed of the plan, had been understandably horrified. Their culture abhorred waste, viewed it as a symbol of entropy and decline. The thought of their sacred world being inundated with alien refuse was anathema, but their desperation was greater than their revulsion. The Xylosian Elder Council, after much agonizing, had granted conditional approval. We offer our world to your methods, humans. Their holographic emissary, Elder Kale, had projected, their light patterns dimming with resignation. But know that our hope is fragile, and our pride is shattered. Eris remembered Kale's words, a chill running down his spine. He wasn't just bringing life. He was bringing a revolution. A dirty, messy, and potentially horrifying revolution. Now, as Xylos slowly materialized on the Terra Nova's main view screen, a bruised purple orb hanging in the blackness, Eris felt a surge of grim determination. He knew the risks. He knew the potential for disaster, for unintended consequences that could make Xylos even worse. But he also saw the glimmer of a new dawn, a radical possibility. The recycled planet. It was a gamble, the biggest humanity had ever taken on a galactic scale. Not just for Xylos, but for humanity's place in the cosmic order. The Terra Nova settled into a high orbit above Xylos, its massive frame a stark silhouette against the dying planet. From the observation deck, Xylos was a grim spectacle. Patches of once fertile land, now barren and cracked, stretched for thousands of kilometers, punctuated by the skeletal remains of crystalline structures that had once been cities. The atmosphere, a thin, hazy veil, allowed the harsh glare of their aging star to penetrate almost unhindered, casting a sickly, perpetual twilight over the desolate surface. Atmospheric composition: 87% nitrogen, 11% carbon dioxide, 2% trace gases, significant levels of sulfur compounds, and heavy metal particulates, Lena Petrova announced, her voice flat, devoid of emotion as she read the scan results. Oxygen levels are effectively zero at breathable altitudes. Surface temperature variance, -80. Ring operator. Celsius at night cycle, +60. Ring operator. Celsius during day cycle. Hydrological data confirms minimal subsurface ice pockets. No liquid water present on the surface. Eris Thorn felt a familiar ache in his chest, the empathic pang he always experienced when witnessing planetary decay. It was a feeling compounded by the knowledge that intelligent life still clung to existence beneath that ravaged surface. So, textbook class M death world, he murmured, more to himself than his team. Only this one used to hum with life, and now it whispers of extinction. Commander Rostova joined them. Her eyes narrowed as she surveyed the data streams. Our Xylosian contacts are prepared for initial surface team deployment, Doctor. Elder Kale has confirmed a secure landing zone at their primary subterranean complex, designated Sanctuary Prime. Good, Eris replied, turning from the view screen. Let's make sure our diplomatic team is ready. We want to demonstrate respect for their customs, even in their desperation. The initial contact was a delicate dance of cultural nuances. The Xylosians, with their delicate crystalline forms and light-based communication, were stark contrast to humanity's robust, carbon-based biology. Elder Kale, a magnificent being whose facets shimmered with a multitude of colors representing wisdom and sorrow, greeted them in a vast, echoing chamber deep beneath the surface. The air inside Sanctuary Prime was recycled, cool, and surprisingly clean, maintained by ancient, failing technology. Humans. Elder Kale's translated voice resonated, a synthesized overlay that struggled to capture the nuance of their light speech. We welcome you to the twilight of Xylos. Your presence is jarring, yet necessary. We have reviewed your proposal. The word proposal seemed to carry a weight of reluctant acceptance, almost distaste. The concept of utilizing discard for rebirth is alien to our understanding. Our very existence is built upon cycles of refinement, not remediation by effluent. Eris stepped forward, his posture open and respectful. Elder Kale, we understand your apprehension. Our methods are indeed unconventional, but necessity often breeds innovation. What you perceive as discard is, to us, highly refined organic matter, pre-processed and infused with the very building blocks of life, designed to accelerate natural processes 1,000-fold. Think of it not as refuse, but as a concentrated seed bank, tailored to kickstart a dead world. He gestured to a holographic projection that shimmered into existence, showcasing the complex internal structure of one of the bioconversion units, massive, spherical pods, each containing tons of what humanity euphemistically called Earth reclamation substrate. Within these units, a controlled ecosystem of genetically engineered bacteria, fungi, and nanites worked in concert, breaking down polymers, synthesizing complex organic molecules, and releasing trace gases. Each unit is a mini-factory, explained Dr. Jen Lee, the lead bioengineer, her voice calm and authoritative. We don't simply dump. These units are precisely engineered dispersal systems. They will be strategically deployed across the planet, burrowing into the surface and releasing their contents in a controlled manner. The initial phase focuses on atmospheric seeding and soil enrichment. The nanites will act as molecular scaffolding, guiding the growth of specialized extremophile bacterial colonies. The Xylosians observed with their intricate light patterns, a flickering dance of skepticism and desperate hope. And these nanites, they are benign. Kale's light form dimmed slightly, conveying caution. Our historical archives speak of self-replicating constructs causing unforeseen ecological cataclysms. These nanites are programmed with strict fail-safes and a finite lifespan, Eris assured him. Their primary function is to facilitate the initial breakdown of complex hydrocarbons and assist in molecular restructuring. Once their task is done, they self-deconstruct. We have learned from our own history, Elder. It was a subtle acknowledgement of Earth's own checkered past with unchecked technological progress. Over the next few days, the human team conducted exhaustive surveys of Xylos' surface. Atmospheric drones crisscrossed the cracked plains, mapping geological fault lines, identifying areas of residual geothermal activity, and scanning for any lingering, native microbial life that might be resistant to their new ecosystem. The data was sobering. The planet's core was unstable, its magnetic field weakening, leaving the surface exposed to solar radiation. The dust storms, whipped up by the planet's thin atmosphere, carried corrosive particles that further eroded the few remaining natural rock formations. The wind erosion is extreme here, noted a geosurvey specialist, pointing to a vast canyon carved by incessant gales. And the soil composition is almost entirely silicate dust, with heavy concentrations of iron oxides. No organic material whatsoever. Eris knelt, scooping up a handful of the reddish-brown dust. It felt dead, inert, completely devoid of the life-giving microbial activity that characterized Earth's soil. This isn't just a lack of life, he mused, letting the dust trickle through his fingers. It's a void where life should be. Our bioconversion units will have their work cut out for them. Preparations for the initial deployment phase began. The Terra Nova transformed into a colossal staging platform. Massive cargo bays opened, revealing hundreds of the spherical bioconversion units, each about 10 meters in diameter. They were sleek, metallic, and utterly alien against the backdrop of Xylos's desolate landscape. Robotic deployment vehicles, rugged and multi-limbed, were lowered to the surface, designed to navigate the treacherous terrain and implant the units precisely where pre-programmed algorithms dictated. We've divided the planet into sectors, Lena explained, pointing to a vast planetary map on the bridge. Initial deployment will focus on the equatorial regions, where temperature fluctuations are slightly less extreme. These units will primarily release atmospheric precursors, basic oxygenating microbial cultures, and carbon-sequestering algae spores. Simultaneously, deeper burrowing units will begin injecting nutrient-rich gels and soil-forming bacteria into the regolith. The Xylosians, initially confined to their underground sanctuaries, began to venture out into shielded observation domes. They watched the human activity with a mixture of awe and trepidation. They saw the giant human ships, the strange mechanical beasts crawling across their sacred plains, and the vast, alien spheres being carefully lowered. It was a spectacle of power and intent they had never witnessed before. They move with such certainty, observed a younger Xylosian, their light patterns flickering with a mix of fear and curiosity, as if they already know the outcome. Elder Kale, observing from a higher vantage point, merely resonated a melancholic chord. Certainty, young one, is a luxury the dying cannot afford to question. They offer us a choice between a desecrated future and no future at all. Eris, busy overseeing the final pre-deployment checks, felt the pressure mount. This wasn't just a scientific experiment. It was a desperate gamble for the survival of an entire civilization. The garbage they were about to deploy was not merely waste. It was hope, a last-ditch effort to rewrite the epitaph of a dying world. The twist, the unexpected consequence, was still a phantom, a whisper on the wind. For now, it was about getting the first seeds of their radical solution into the dead heart of Xylos. The Great Waste Disposal, as some on Earth had jokingly called it, was about to begin. The day of the Great Inoculation dawned, if dawn could be said to exist on a world shrouded in perpetual dust. Inside Sanctuary Prime, the Xylosians gathered in their observation domes, their collective light patterns dimmed to a somber, anxious glow. Above them, on the surface, the human team was a flurry of coordinated activity. Eris Thorne stood beside Commander Rostova on the bridge of the Terra Nova, the main view screen displaying a real-time, orbital perspective of Xylos. The robotic deployment vehicles, hundreds of them, had fanned out across the chosen equatorial sector, their multi-jointed limbs expertly navigating the fractured terrain. All units green for deployment, Doctor, Rostova announced, her voice crisp. Synchronized release sequence initiated in T-minus 60 seconds. Eris took a deep breath. This was it. The culmination of years of research, hundreds of simulations, and countless ethical debates. Activate environmental monitoring grid, Lena, he instructed Petrova. I want real-time atmospheric, soil, and subsurface readings. Any anomalies, no matter how minor, report immediately. On cue, a network of autonomous environmental sensors, previously deployed by scout drones, came online, painting Xylos with a shimmering grid of data points. 30 seconds, Rostova counted down. The bioconversion units, resting on their individual deployment pads, began to hum, a low, resonant thrum that vibrated through the very ground. They were not merely containers. They were self-contained ecological initiators. Their outer shells, composed of a degradable yet resilient biopolymer, were designed to melt away slowly, releasing their contents. 10 seconds, 5 mark. Across thousands of square kilometers, simultaneously, the bioconversion units activated. Instead of a violent explosion or a sudden deluge, the release was a controlled, almost serene, process. From the base of each sphere, a fine, iridescent mist began to emanate, rising slowly into the thin, turbulent atmosphere. It was a complex cocktail of airborne photosynthetic microbes, designed to thrive in extreme conditions and gradually alter the atmospheric composition. These pioneering organisms were engineered to bind with the prevalent carbon dioxide, releasing nascent oxygen molecules, and to precipitate heavier atmospheric particulates, slowly clearing the haze. Simultaneously, from beneath the units, specialized drilling arms extended, boring deep into the silicate dust. Through these conduits, viscous, dark green gel, teeming with soil-forming bacteria, mycorrhizal fungi spores, and nutrient-rich organic compounds, was injected. This wasn't merely fertilizer. It was a living foundation, designed to convert the inert regolith into fertile topsoil, layer by painstaking layer. Atmospheric oxygen levels registering a negligible increase, Doctor, Lena reported, her eyes glued to the data, but within expected parameters for initial dispersal. Particulate matter showing a slow aggregation effect. Soil units reporting successful penetration and gel dispersal. For the Xylosians in Sanctuary Prime, the visual was profoundly disturbing. Through their reinforced observation windows, they saw the surface of their world being slowly coated in an alien, shimmering fog. The reddish dust, a symbol of their planet's slow demise, was now being overlaid by an unnatural, greenish-blue sheen. It looked, to their sensitive light receptors, like a growing infection. Elder Kale resonated a deep, sorrowful harmony. "The defilement begins," he whispered, his light patterns flickering with internal conflict. "Our world, accepting foreign humors." A younger Xylosian, whose light form was a vibrant yellow of youthful curiosity, vibrated nervously. "But the air, Elder, is it changing?" Indeed, a subtle shift was occurring. Though imperceptible to the naked eye, the human instruments registered it. The first, hesitant exhales of manufactured life. Over the ensuing days, the deployment continued across the vast, designated sector. Thousands upon thousands of bioconversion units were meticulously placed, each a tiny beacon of humanity's audacious hope. The Terra Nova served as the central command, its labs working overtime, analyzing real-time samples beamed up from the surface, constantly tweaking the dispersal rates and environmental parameters. Eris spent hours in the bioremediation labs, watching magnified holographic projections of the engineered microbes at work. He saw the carbon-sequestering algae, resembling minuscule, emerald dust motes, multiplying with astonishing rapidity in their contained environments. He saw the soil bacteria, worming their way through simulated regolith, breaking down mineral bonds, releasing vital trace elements. It was a testament to humanity's mastery of genetic engineering and ecological design. "We're seeing significant microbial bloom in soil samples from Sector Gamma," Dr. Janley announced one morning, her face alight with professional satisfaction. "The nanite-assisted breakdown of silicates is exceeding projections. We might have viable soil structure in weeks, not months." Eris smiled, a rare, genuine smile. "Excellent, Jen. Keep pushing those parameters. We need to accelerate this as much as possible." However, not all reactions were positive, especially among the Xylosians. The initial discomfort escalated into outright distress for some. The concept of introducing waste was deeply ingrained as taboo in their culture, a symbol of decay and impurity. As the iridescent mist spread, and the first strange, alien, shimmering patches began to appear on the surface, visible even from the underground observation domes. A schism began to form within the Xylosian community. "This is not rebirth," resonated a Xylosian designated as the resonator of ancestral purity, his light patterns sharp and agitated. "This is a contagion. They are replacing our essence with their refuse. We must resist." Elder Kale attempted to mediate, his light form radiating calming blue patterns. "We made a pact, brothers and sisters, a pact of desperation. Do you offer an alternative to the dust and the silence?" But the argument festered. Some Xylosians, particularly the younger generations who had never known a truly vibrant Xylos, showed a flicker of curious hope. They had only known desolation, and even this strange, filthy greening seemed preferable to utter extinction. Others, steeped in millennia of Xylosian tradition, saw it as the ultimate desecration. Meanwhile, on the Terra Nova, the human team focused on the scientific. They were already planning Phase 2, the introduction of more complex synthetic organic matter, what Eris affectionately called bioscraps, to further enrich the burgeoning soil. These were essentially biomass pellets, created from humanity's discarded foodstuffs, processed organics, and even recycled bioplastics, all rigorously sterilized and infused with specific microbial cultures. The goal was to provide a continuous, self-sustaining feedstock for the new ecosystem. "The Xylosians are divided, Doctor," Commander Rostova informed Eris, a touch of concern in her voice. "Our diplomatic liaison reports increasing unrest. They perceive the visible changes as a direct assault on their cultural identity." Eris sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I know, Commander. It's a bitter pill to swallow. Imagine if an alien race offered to save Earth by covering it in their equivalent of our sewage. We have to keep reminding them of the alternative. And we have to show them, not just tell them, that this is working." He walked over to a terminal displaying a holographic projection of Xylos. The initial sector, once a uniform bruised purple, now showed faint, shimmering patches of green-blue, like a slow-motion bruise healing. It was alien, unnatural in its luminescence, but it was life. The greatest challenge, however, wasn't the Xylosians' cultural aversion. It was the possibility of unintended consequences. What if the engineered microbes mutated? What if the nanites developed unforeseen behaviors? What if, in their rush to create life from waste, they created something entirely new, something beyond their control or comprehension? Eris had prepared for countless scenarios, but the very nature of life was its unpredictability. And on Xylos, he was about to unleash a torrent of it, born from the very things humanity had discarded. The twist, the unexpected aspect of their garbage disposal methods, was still simmering beneath the surface, waiting for the right conditions to emerge. Weeks bled into months. The initial phase of atmospheric and soil remediation had exceeded even Eris Thorne's most optimistic projections. The constant efflux of bioengineered mists from the buried units had begun to precipitate heavy metals, clearing the perpetual haze. Sunlight, though still harsh, now occasionally pierced through to the surface, revealing glimpses of the burgeoning green-blue luminescence spreading across the equatorial plains. Atmospheric oxygen levels, once negligible, were now measurable, albeit still far from breathable. The silicate dust, once barren, was slowly coalescing into a rudimentary, nutrient-rich soil, a dark, strangely scented substrate that absorbed light rather than reflected it. Dr. Janley's voice, usually calm, was now tinged with an unusual excitement. "Doctor, we're detecting anomalous biomass signatures in Sector Delta. Significant growth, far denser than our projected microbial mats. And the spectral analysis, it's unlike anything we've programmed." Eris, who had been reviewing hydration models, straightened, a prickle of anticipation and unease running down his spine. "Anomalous. Define anomalous, Jien." "It's organizing, Doctor," she explained, pulling up a detailed spectroscopic scan. "The molecular structures are consistent with complex organic polymers, but the arrangements, their forming structures, non-random, almost patterned. We're seeing rapid accretion of bioscraps, our organic feedstock, into discrete forms." They deployed observation drones to Sector Delta, What they saw sent a chill down Eris's spine, even as his scientific curiosity flared. The ground, once a uniform, dark greenish mat, was now studded with strange, nascent forms. They were fungal in nature, but unlike any fungus known to Earth. Some resembled massive, glistening polyps, pulsating with a soft, internal light. Others unfurled like intricate, shimmering fractals, their tendrils reaching into the newly formed soil. They were consuming the bioscraps with astonishing efficiency, breaking down the complex polymers and plastics at rates far beyond the engineered microbes alone. My word, Lena Petrova breathed, leaning closer to the main screen. They're beautiful, a horrifying sort of way. They're consuming the waste, Eris murmured, a realization dawning on him. Our garbage. These aren't just enhanced biodigesters. They're living organisms, adapting to thrive on our most recalcitrant discarded materials. This was the twist. Not a failure, not a mutation into something toxic, but a grotesque, beautiful, and utterly unexpected flourishing. Humanity had poured its waste onto a dying world, and that waste, infused with nanites and tailored microbes, had become the catalyst for an entirely new, alien form of life, a garbage ecosystem. The science team worked frantically, analyzing samples beamed up from the drones. Genetic sequencing confirmed the organisms were indeed hybrids, incorporating elements of the human-engineered microbes, but also unknown genetic sequences that suggested rapid, accelerated evolution, possibly drawing upon residual, dormant Xylosian organic matter, or even the planet's unique electromagnetic field. They were xyloterran symbionts, a truly novel biological classification. These are not simple decomposers, Dr. Chen, the mission's lead geneticist, reported, his voice high with excitement. They're metabolically active, highly adaptable. They're extracting energy directly from the breakdown of complex polymers, even some of the more stable synthetic compounds. And they're growing fast, exponentially fast. Beyond the fungal forms, other, more mobile organisms began to emerge. Tiny, multi-limbed creatures, resembling iridescent beetles, scuttled across the nascent soil, their chitinous forms reflecting the strange, new light of xylos. They seemed to graze on the fungal polyps, acting as mobile dispersal units for spores. Later, larger, worm-like beings, translucent and pulsating, burrowed through the soil, churning it, aerating it, and further distributing the nutrient-rich humus. They were scavengers, living alongside the newly formed fungal flora, utterly dependent on humanity's trash for their sustenance. The Xylosians, observing from their domes, were aghast. Their concept of life was pure, crystalline, ephemeral. This new, burgeoning ecosystem was fleshy, organic, and rooted in the very concept of impurity. What is that? Elder Kale's light patterns vibrated with alarm as a drone feed showed a cluster of glowing, pulsating polyps. It is squalid. It is a horror. You have not given us life, humans. You have given us the plague of filth. Eris, communicating with Kale via the diplomatic channel, tried to explain. Elder, this is life. A new form of life, yes, adapted to the unique conditions we introduced. It is processing the very components that will revitalize your world. It is turning what you call filth into the building blocks of a new biosphere. But it is not Xylosian life, protested another elder, the weaver of ancient harmonies, their patterns flashing with outrage. It is a violation. Our legends speak of purification, not putrefaction. The debate raged within Sanctuary Prime, a chasm opening between those who saw only desecration and those, particularly the younger generations, who began to glimpse a desperate, if unpalatable, hope. The world outside their domes was undeniably changing, undeniably becoming more hospitable. The atmospheric purpling was slowly receding, replaced by a hazy green. The temperatures were stabilizing, thanks to the nascent, absorbing ground cover. And the air, though still unbreathable, contained a growing percentage of oxygen, a testament to the ravenous photosynthesis of the new garbage flora. Back on the Terra Nova, Eris wrestled with the implications. This wasn't what they planned, not precisely. They had intended for the engineered waste to break down, to form basic soil and atmosphere, then to introduce curated Earth-like flora and fauna. But this new ecosystem was so robust, so self-sustaining, that it was quickly outcompeting any planned introductions. It was terraforming, yes, but terraforming by garbage. "Doctor, we have a critical decision to make," Commander Ostova said, her voice grave as she reviewed the latest data. "This garbage ecosystem is accelerating the terraforming process at an unprecedented rate. It's stable, non-toxic, and incredibly efficient at processing the waste. But it's also completely alien. Do we try to suppress it and introduce our planned biosystems, or do we lean into this new reality?" Eris stared at the burgeoning, pulsating landscape on the main screen. Suppress it? How? It was already too widespread, too deeply integrated into the nascent environment. And why suppress something that was so effectively doing its job? "We lean into it, Commander," Eris said slowly, a sense of awe replacing his initial apprehension. "This isn't a failure, it's an opportunity. Life, raw and untamed, finding a way in the most unexpected circumstances. It's a testament to the fundamental drive of biology. Our garbage, Commander, is becoming the foundation of a new world." He turned to his team. "Reevaluate all our protocols. We need to study these organisms, understand their complete metabolic pathways, their reproductive cycles, their symbiotic relationships. We need to find ways to optimize their growth, to direct their spread, not to fight it. Xylos is being reborn, but not as a mirror of Earth. It's becoming something entirely new, something born of our cast-offs." The next phase of the mission shifted dramatically. Instead of meticulously introducing Earth seeds and nascent life, the human team now focused on supplying the garbage ecosystem with a steady, controlled supply of processed waste. They experimented with different bioscrap compositions, watching how the new life forms reacted, how they diversified. They discovered that different types of discarded polymers and organic compounds led to different types of growth, some creating towering, crystalline-like structures that resembled plants, others forming vast, spongy mats that soaked up residual radiation, others still producing sweet-smelling, breathable gases. The Terra Nova transformed from a terraforming vessel into a massive ecological research station, its bays now filled with a constant stream of waste processed from Earth-orbiting depots. The implications were profound. Humanity had struggled for centuries with its own waste problem, meticulously recycling, incinerating, or burying its detritus. Now they had discovered a use for it on an unimaginable scale, as the raw material for planetary creation. Down in Sanctuary Prime, the Xylosians watched the transformation with increasing bewilderment. The air they were pumping into their shelters, carefully scrubbed by human purifiers, was now undeniably richer. The distant, shimmering lights on the surface grew brighter, more vibrant. They saw bizarre, organic shapes rising from the plains, undulating with an alien rhythm. It was a world alien to their every sensibility, yet it was undeniably, irrevocably alive. The fear and revulsion were still there, but now, a fragile thread of wonder, of hope, began to weave its way through their collective consciousness. The filth, as they called it, was working. It was bringing Xylos back from the dead. The transformation of Xylos was no longer subtle. From their deep underground complex, Sanctuary Prime, the Xylosians watched their dying world bloom with alien vigor, a vibrant, if unsettling, tapestry of new life. What had been bruised purple and ochre was now a kaleidoscopic canvas of emeralds, pulsating ambers, and shimmering violets. The atmospheric haze, once thick with dust and pollutants, was giving way to a nascent, humid atmosphere, thick with the earthy, sweet, and occasionally sharp scents of the burgeoning garbage ecosystem. The hum of human machinery, once the dominant sound from the surface, was now accompanied by the soft rustle of strange, crystalline flora, the low thrum of subterranean biodigesters, and the faint, skittering sounds of the newly emergent waste fauna. Within Sanctuary Prime, the Xylosian society was in turmoil. The Elder Council, once a cohesive unit, was deeply fractured. The resonator of ancestral purity, along with the significant conservative faction, viewed the transformation as an unholy desecration. Their light patterns were often a furious, flashing crimson, signifying outrage and despair. "This is not our world," Resonator cried, his crystalline form vibrating with indignation. "They have defiled our sacred plains with their refuse. This life is a cancerous growth, an insult to our very being. We should have chosen extinction with dignity, not this putrid rebirth." Elder Kale, though deeply saddened by the schism, held firm. "Dignity, Resonator, is a luxury the dead cannot afford. What we see is the genesis of an ecosystem. It is raw, yes. It is alien to our senses, yes. But it is life. Our instruments confirm the atmosphere is thickening, the soil is forming, the radiation levels are dropping. Our world, our home, is breathing again. But at what cost?" Another elder, the keeper of ancient lore, pulsed with sorrow. "Our cycles of refinement, our pure forms, our very history, it is being buried under their detritus." The younger generations, however, were proving more adaptable. Having known only a dying world, the sight of any life, however strange, filled them with a nascent wonder. Young Xylosians, whose light patterns still held the bright, inquisitive yellows of youth, would gather at the observation domes, mesmerized by the burgeoning, alien beauty. They called the pulsating polyps shimmer hearts and the scuttling, iridescent beetles glimmer crawlers. They saw not defilement, but a miracle, however strange its origins. Eris Thorn and his team understood the Xylosians' cultural shock. They initiated regular, detailed holographic presentations, showing the Xylosians the scientific data, the undeniable proof of their planet's healing. They explained the complex metabolic pathways of the garbage flora, how they were converting inert pollutants into breathable gases and fertile soil. They showed time-lapse videos of dust storms subsiding, of nascent lakes forming from recycled atmospheric moisture. "Elder Kale," Eris explained during one such briefing, his own compassion evident, "we comprehend your distress. This transformation is radical. But consider this. These new life forms are incredibly efficient. They are literally built from your world's decay and our waste. They are creating the conditions necessary for your survival, for the eventual flourishing of even your native species, should any resilient spores remain dormant beneath the surface." The concept of waste as life slowly began to seep into the Xylosian consciousness, spurred by the undeniable evidence of Xylos' healing. Their sensors, though archaic compared to humanity's, confirmed the atmospheric shifts. Their limited biological scanners registered the presence of new, complex organic molecules in the air and soil. The air they breathed in their enclosures, once stale and recycled, began to carry faint, earthy notes, hints of an outside world reviving. Then came the first true breakthrough in Xylosian adaptation. One of the glimmer crawlers, a creature resembling a six-legged, iridescent beetle that fed on the shimmering polyps, found its way into a lower, abandoned section of Sanctuary Prime through a hairline fissure. Panic erupted. This filth beast had invaded their pristine sanctuary, but before it could be vaporized, a young Xylosian, Lyra, the same one who had dubbed them glimmer crawlers, gently resonated a calming pattern and cautiously approached the small creature. Instead of recoiling, the glimmer crawler paused, its multifaceted eyes reflecting Lyra's shimmering form. It seemed to resonate with a low, contented thrum, a sound the Xylosians hadn't heard from any living thing on their world in centuries. Lyra, overcome by curiosity, extended a slender, crystalline digit. The creature, instead of biting or fleeing, simply nudged its head against her, its chitin smooth and surprisingly clean. News of Lyra's interaction spread like wildfire through Sanctuary Prime. It was a small act, but profoundly symbolic. The filth beast was not aggressive. It was alive, and in its small, alien way, it was beautiful. This opened the door for cautious experimentation. Human scientists provided carefully controlled samples of waste flora to Xylosian researchers. They observed how the strange plants grew, how they converted atmospheric components, how they biodegrade various materials. They began to understand their unique metabolic processes, their ability to thrive in such extreme, previously barren conditions. One Xylosian bioengineer, Elder Forlag, whose light patterns had always been a questioning indigo, began to see practical applications. These organic structures, he resonated, observing a sample of crystalline garbage flora growing in a containment field. They absorb atmospheric toxins more efficiently than our ancient scrubbers, even. And the byproduct, it is a surprisingly pure form of carbon. This was the turning point. As the Xylosians began to understand the functionality of the new ecosystem, their revulsion slowly began to give way to grudging acceptance, then to curiosity, and finally, to a cautious, almost symbiotic relationship. They started to identify patterns, to map the distribution of different waste flora species, to predict their growth, and observe their interactions with the nascent environment. The planet itself was changing rapidly. Rivers, fed by melted subsurface ice and atmospheric precipitation, began to carve new channels across the plains, flowing through land now softened by the waste-borne soil. The sky, though not yet blue, had shifted to a hazy jade, reflecting the greens and purples of the surface. The Terra Nova crew, observing from orbit, were astounded. Xylos was no longer dying. It was undeniably alive, albeit in a form none could have predicted. However, the complete acceptance was far from universal. The faction led by the Resonator of Ancestral Purity began to speak of a great cleansing once the humans departed, a desperate hope to purge their world of the alien filth. They plotted quietly in the deeper, forgotten sections of Sanctuary Prime, convinced that this rebirth was a curse, not a blessing. Eris Thorn knew this internal conflict was inevitable. He had seen it on other worlds, albeit on smaller scales. Humanity had brought life, but also an upheaval of deeply held beliefs. His goal was not just a green planet, but functional relationship between the Xylosians and their new reality. He believed, fundamentally, that life, in all its messy, unpredictable forms, was inherently valuable. And on Xylos, life had taken root in the most unexpected of places, humanity's garbage. The Xylosians, ancient and wise, were being forced to confront their definitions of purity and pollution, of life and death, of salvation and sacrifice. It was a profound, painful, and utterly necessary evolution. As Xylos continued its rapid transformation, the internal conflict within Sanctuary Prime escalated. The very air they breathed, now infused with the earthy scents of the new ecosystem, became a source of contention. For some, it was the breath of renewed hope. For others, the stench of an irreversible defilement. The faction led by the Resonator of Ancestral Purity grew increasingly vocal, their light patterns often flashing with urgent, almost aggressive warnings. They saw the proliferation of the waste flora and waste fauna not as a miracle, but as an insidious invasion. They meticulously documented instances where the spreading biomass encroached upon ancient Xylosian structures, albeit long abandoned and crumbling ones on the surface, viewing it as a deliberate obliteration of their heritage. They are consuming our past. Resonator vibrated, his form rigid with indignation during an emergency council meeting. Our sacred lands are becoming a compost heap. The humans have tricked us, not saved us. They have merely replaced our slow death with a faster, more humiliating one. Elder Kale, though deeply saddened by the schism, held firm. Resonator, we were offered a choice, utter cessation of being, or a path, however unconventional, to continued existence. The planet thrives. Our young are witnessing life for the first time in centuries. Is their future less valuable than the purity of our dust? The debate wasn't confined to the Elder Council. It permeated every facet of Xylosian society. Arguments flared in communal chambers, and the intricate light patterns of debate shifted from formal discourse to impassioned, often chaotic displays. Some Xylosians, driven by a desperate hope, began to argue for a complete integration with the new ecosystem, suggesting that their very forms might evolve to interact with it, drawing sustenance or even building materials from its abundance. Others, horrified by the thought, clung even more fiercely to their ancient traditions, advocating for a return to a pure Xylos, purged of the alien life. Eris Thorn, observing these developments from the Terra Nova, felt the weight of their choices. Humanity had not anticipated such a profound cultural crisis. Their mandate was planetary restoration, not societal upheaval. Commander Rostova, ever pragmatic, raised concerns about the stability of the Xylosian leadership. Doctor, if this faction becomes too strong, they could sabotage our efforts. They could attempt to cleanse the planet by force, which would undo everything. We must find a way to bridge this divide, Eris mused. They need to see the value, the purpose, of this new life, not just in abstract terms of planetary health, but in tangible ways that resonate with their culture. The opportunity arose unexpectedly. A critical energy conduit, part of Sanctuary Prime's ancient life support system, began to fail. Repairs were beyond the Xylosians' dwindling technical capabilities and the human team's spare parts. The conduit, deep within the planet's unstable crust, was prone to microfractures, constantly leaking vital power. Elder Forlag, the bioengineer who had first recognized the functional aspects of the waste flora, approached Eris with a radical idea. Humans, you're living polymers, the ones that can absorb and restructure minerals. Could they be directed to seal the microfractures in our conduit? A living patch. It was an audacious proposal, one that required immense precision and a deep understanding of the garbage ecosystem's nascent intelligence. Eris and Jianli pored over the data. Certain waste flora species, particularly the shimmering, fractal-like growths they had dubbed energy harvesters, exhibited properties that suggested a capacity for directed growth and energy absorption. It's risky, Jen warned. We'd need to introduce a specific strain, precisely engineered to target their conduit's material composition, and program it to only grow within the cracks, then self-deactivate once sealed. Too much, and it could clog the entire system. But if it works, Eris countered, it could be the bridge we need. It would demonstrate the practical utility of this new life in a way no data packet ever could. The Xylosian Elder Council debated the proposal for days. To allow the filth plants to enter the very heart of their sanctuary's lifeblood was an act of profound trust or utter desperation. Ultimately, Elder Kale swayed the decision. If we die here, in our purity, he resonated, his light patterns flickering with a quiet resolve, then purity is merely a prelude to oblivion. Let us embrace this chance, however alien it may be. The operation was meticulously planned. A small human team, accompanied by Elder Forlag and Lyra, carefully navigated the ancient, crumbling tunnels. A specialized robotic arm, guided by precision lasers, injected a microscopic droplet of highly concentrated energy harvester spores into the most critical fracture in the conduit. The Xylosians, both those hopeful for success and those praying for failure, watched with bated light patterns. Slowly, imperceptibly at first, the glowing green filaments of the waste flora began to grow. They pulsed with a faint, steady light as they sought out the minute cracks, feeding on the escaping energy, and synthesizing a new, flexible biopolymer that sealed the leaks. Over the next few hours, the power fluctuations in Sanctuary Prime stabilized, then ceased. The ancient conduit was repaired, not by sterile metal, but by living, breathing, garbage-borne organisms. A collective resonance of awe, and then a ripple of astonished relief, washed through Sanctuary Prime. The filth had saved them. It had, quite literally, become their lifeblood. This event was a powerful turning point. While the Resonators faction did not immediately disappear, their influence waned significantly. The Xylosians began to truly grasp the symbiotic potential of their new world. They started to venture out onto the surface in protective suits, not just for observation, but for cautious interaction. They discovered that some of the waste fauna, like the glimmer crawlers, were not just harmless, but could be attracted by certain light patterns and even seemed to respond with simple, rhythmic thrums. Beyond Xylos, however, the story of the recycled planet began to ripple through the wider galactic community. Initial reports were met with disbelief, then fascination. A dying world, terraformed by garbage? It was an unprecedented feat, and a challenging concept. Some civilizations, still grappling with their own waste management issues, saw xylos as a potential solution, a blueprint for planetary-scale recycling. Others viewed it with suspicion, wondering what unforeseen ecological or biological dangers might emerge from such a radical experiment. Galactic trade envoys and scientific delegations began to request access to xylos, eager to study this miraculous, if bizarre, rebirth. Humanity, in its bold solution to Xylos' plight, had inadvertently sparked a new debate about environmentalism, resource management, and the very definition of life in the cosmos. The waste wars, it seemed, had moved from internal Xylosian conflict to a galactic philosophical one, with Xylos, the recycled planet, at its very heart. With the successful repair of Sanctuary Prime's energy conduit, a profound shift occurred within Xylosian society. The pragmatic necessity of survival began to outweigh deeply ingrained cultural taboos. The younger generations, especially, embraced the reality of their new world with a vibrant, unburdened curiosity. They saw not defilement, but dynamism, not waste, but resource. Elder Forlag, now celebrated as the integrator, led the charge. He worked closely with Dr. Eris Thorne and his team, studying the complex biochemistry of the waste flora and fauna. They discovered that various species of the garbage ecosystem produced unique compounds, potent atmospheric scrubbers, highly efficient nutrient concentrates, and even a new class of biopolymers that were incredibly strong, yet fully biodegradable. These shimmerhearts, Forlag resonated, pointing to a pulsating, amber-colored polyp in a holographic projection, produce a compound that, when refined, significantly enhances our crystalline form's resistance to radiation. It is an unexpected gift from what we once deemed impurity. This discovery spurred a flurry of Xylosian innovation. Ancient Xylosian architectural principles, based on resonant crystalline structures, were reimagined. Instead of mining rare minerals, they began to cultivate specific waste flora strains, directing their growth to form intricate, living biostructures that served as dwellings, conduits, and even nascent communication arrays on the surface. These structures pulsed with soft, organic light, a stark contrast to their previous, austere crystalline cities, but undeniably alive and adaptive. The glimmer crawlers and other waste fauna, once objects of revulsion, became subjects of fascinated study. Xylosian researchers observed their complex behaviors, realizing they played crucial roles in aerating the soil, distributing spores, and consuming specific waste byproducts. Some species were even found to generate faint electrical currents, which the Xylosians learned to tap into, powering small devices within their new organic dwellings. The concept of waste management for the Xylosians evolved from avoiding pollution to actively nurturing a symbiotic relationship with the garbage ecosystem. They designed new waste harvesters, not to discard, but to gather specific types of human-supplied waste, still delivered by the Terra Nova from Earth's orbital processing centers, and introduce them to optimal growth zones for desired waste flora and fauna species. This became a new, vital industry, integrating seamlessly with their existing societal structures. The once divided Xylosian society began to coalesce around this new reality, while a small, extremist fringe continued to hold onto the dream of a pure Xylos. The vast majority found purpose and hope in adapting to their recycled planet. Festivals of new growth began to emerge, celebrating the vibrant, if unconventional, life blooming around them. Their light patterns became richer, more varied, reflecting the diverse palette of their transforming world. Art forms evolved, depicting the intricate beauty of the waste flora, the delicate forms of the waste fauna, and the symbiotic dance between Xylosian and human. Eris Thorne, watching these developments, felt a profound sense of accomplishment, tinged with humility. They had come to save a world, but they had also fundamentally reshaped a civilization. The Xylosians had taught humanity a lesson too, that life, in its infinite ingenuity, can find beauty and purpose in the most unexpected of places, even in that which is discarded. The Terra Nova completed its primary mission. Xylos was no longer dying. Its atmosphere was robust, though still different from Earth's. Its hydrological cycle was functioning, with vast, bioluminescent lakes shimmering across the plains. Its surface was a living, breathing tapestry of organic life, vibrant and self-sustaining, fueled by humanity's processed waste. The environmental conditions were now stable enough for the Xylosians to begin venturing onto the surface without extensive life support, interacting directly with their transformed world. Humanity's presence on Xylos shifted from active terraformers to long-term ecological observers and partners. A permanent, compact research station was established, staffed by a smaller, dedicated team, continuing to study the evolving ecosystem and assisting the Xylosians with managing their unique environment. Regular shipments of processed organic waste from Earth continued, not as a burden, but as a vital nutrient supply for Xylos' unique biosphere, a literal cosmic composting system. The Xylosians, in turn, offered humanity invaluable insights into deep-time ecological adaptation, energy conservation from organic systems, and a philosophical perspective on the interconnectedness of all life, even that which arises from decay. They became interstellar advocates for humanity's recycled planet methodology, inspiring other civilizations to reevaluate their own waste management and planetary stewardship. Centuries later, Xylos was a thriving world, known throughout the galaxy as the recycled planet. Its unique biosphere, born from human ingenuity and discarded elements, was a marvel. Towering, translucent waste flora forests stretched towards the jade-colored sky, their internal lights illuminating the landscape. Swarms of glimmer-crawlers harvested bioenergy from specialized organic farms. Xylosian cities, now a harmonious blend of their ancient crystalline architecture and the living, organic structures of the waste flora, shimmered with a new, vibrant energy. The Xylosians themselves had subtly changed. Their crystalline forms often held faint, organic patterns, reflecting their deep connection to the new ecosystem. Their light patterns, once primarily focused on internal reflection and ancient harmonies, now embraced a broader spectrum of vibrant hues, representing the messy, beautiful reality of their world. They had moved beyond mere survival. They had found a new way to live, a new identity forged from their lowest point. The unexpected twist, humanity's garbage disposal methods, had not merely revitalized a dying world. It had redefined what it meant to be alive, what it meant to be clean, and what it meant to find beauty and purpose in the overlooked. Xylos stood as a testament not just to human capability, but to life's indomitable will, even when nurtured by the discarded remnants of another civilization. It was a planet that had truly turned trash into treasure, a cosmic garden grown from the ultimate refuse. If Xylos' story has ignited your imagination and made you rethink what's possible, hit that like button. Subscribe for more tales of future tech and cosmic survival, and let us know in the comments, what's the wildest way humanity could solve its biggest problems?